else might relate to a situation where it might feel a little bit pointless to properly organize a section of a room until you've completed all the tasks that you need to do in said room. So for example, in our situation in the dining room, there's a couple of things that we still have left to do. We have a painting to hang up, we have a service cabinet to reorganize, we have a curtain that needs to go back up, we have some decor items around the house that we might switch around. With all that being said, it's important to note that when you're organizing a space, it doesn't mean that you have to wait for the entire area to be finished for you to finally start properly putting things away, organizing areas within the room. You can start with one component of it, for example a cabinet in a dining room. But just because there might be several things to do in a space doesn't mean that you at least can't get started on one section. So for example here, what's the point of waiting until everything is done to finally organize the dining room cabinet, because then for months you wouldn't be enjoying the use of a proper organized dining room cabinet. So in this video I wanted to share some simple tips that you can do to organize your cabinet, or even on how to start to organize the cabinet, and perhaps some things that you might have thought of. But first thing I of course did was vacuum and clean the whole cabinet. And just want to give a little tip for if you have a wooden cabinet. Do be careful about what cleaning products you use, and maybe test it on the small area of the cabinet, because I did have a small section that got faded from the first cleaning product I used. I think I tried to remove a sticker, and I tried using something like nail polish remover to get off that sticky residue, but it made the wood varnish just fade a little bit. So do be aware of what products you use to clean special items like a wooden cabinet. I did want to first mention that I did actually start organizing it a few months ago, so I'll be using a few of those overlay clips as I'm talking through this. And so I first organized the cabinet after I'd completed the big kitchen organization makeover. And so that can lead me to my first tip, is if you have a kitchen that's feeling a bit overcrowded, see if you can take some of your service or glasses, maybe even special cutlery, into your dining room cabinet so that it's not necessarily all taking up space in the kitchen. I do want to add to that too, of course, not put all your plates, glasses, bowls, etc. in your dining room cabinet. Of course, do keep a few of them in your kitchen, because it's always nice that if you just need a plate quickly, you can just grab some in the kitchen cabinet. You don't always have to come here. So keep a few more of the easy to use service in the kitchen. These are those sets of plates that are incomplete, or you have a couple of them that have been chipped. So just more easy to use crockery that you, I guess, wouldn't really care about if one more plate breaks. And then as for the rest of them, we keep the more sporadically used or fancy service in here. So for example, some nicer bowls and larger pizza plates like this. And it was great when we were finally able to put these plates in this cabinet here, because we used to keep them at this top cabinet in the kitchen, and we have to get the ladder out to get it out. So placing them here has made it a lot more easy and efficient to use them. Those big plates also remind me of one quick tip that I want to share. For if you're in the process of buying a dining room cabinet and you haven't done so already, is that, well, before you get it, do consider a little bit about what you want to store in it, and then with that, look at what the largest item is that you want to store in that cabinet. So for example, when we were at the store looking at several different options, and so I did keep in mind that I wanted the bottom part to be able to store those plates. And so I measured the plates and made sure that they would fit in the bottom of one of those cabinets. Now the next step, before you even start putting things into the cabinet, is kind of think about the flow of how you want the dining room cabinet to work. So for example, with this cabinet, I'm thinking about the flow of how we use the space. I had at the beginning thought that it would be best to make the right side be dedicated more towards dining room accessories or dining room table setting placement items. So for example, placemats, napkins, candles, napkin holders. And the left side would be better dedicated towards glasses, like wine glasses, the pizza plates, because the left side is also closer to the kitchens, and so having it on the left side just made it feel like it flows a bit better with the kitchen. And then I figured that the middle part would be best for more decor items like a nicer cake stand, vases, and alcohol at the bottom. Okay, and so once you have a preliminary idea established of how you want to organize your cabinet and what kind of flow you think would work best, you can start to put things into the cabinet. So the first thing I did was I collected everything that I thought could go into this cabinet. So all the candles, all the placemats, all the napkins. I laid them out on the table and I categorized them by candles in one section, glasses in another section, placemats in another section, and so by categorizing it, I first had a good overview of what I was working with and where things could best go. And so when you're starting to put things into the cabinet, you want to think about a flow of what is your least used items to the most used items. So here I place the candle items that we're setting a table, you want something nice, or you want to put these in the living room, you can grab them out. you want to go for a bit more of a fancy dining room setting out, get out your white linen, get out some fancier candles, place them there. Then all the extra candle items that we don't use so often or that we have no use to use yet. Extra candles, or for example, instead of using valuable door space for extra candlesticks, I recommend putting them into an old vase that you're not using anymore, and then you can store them like so. Then with this area here, I placed all of our placemats, just putting the ones that we use the most at the top and the ones that we use the least at the bottom. Then one quick strategy that you can try to organize your tablecloths if you don't want to place them all on top of each other is that you could try seeing if you could use one of those pan dividers and place them in between those pan divider slots. Now you do want to make sure that it can open wide enough, and an even better option would be is if you can adjust each slot individually rather than that each slot opens to the same width as you stretch out the pan divider. But unfortunately that technique did not work for this space, and we don't have that many tablecloths and we have the space for it, so I didn't mind folding them and stacking them on top of each other. And then with the side for the service, I placed the heavier items at the bottom, so all those big plates went at the very bottom, and things like these extra salad bowls went at the top. And another tip for if you want to maximize storage is see if you can incorporate some of those organizational stands. And then finally, I kept this section for more glassware related items, so things like wine glasses and water jugs. And these things, I put them at the top so that, we don't use them that often, but they're still easily accessible enough, or if we set the table for more people, then it's easy enough to find and grab. And I kept the space quite empty on purpose because I wanted to leave enough room for extra wine glasses or beer glasses or other kind of specific glasses for when we get them. So that's another quick tip for if you know that you're still missing some kind of item, then don't try to fill it with something else. Just leave that space empty until you get that specific item that you want. And then we use this cabinet to place the complete set of this dinnerware set. Now again, things will of course adjust depending on your needs. For example, we did not put in that many dinnerware items into our cabinet because we stored most of it into the other cabinet in the kitchen. But over time, as we start to settle into a space more, then we might want to make some changes where, for example, I might want to put all the alcohol and the glasses into the brown cabinet and then put the service into this cabinet. One important aspect I think every dining space should have: a set of extra napkins that you don't care about. So these are napkins that you're not going to be trying to spot treat if they get stained. You're just going to chuck them in the laundry, fold them, and then put them back in this area. These are also those miscellaneous napkins that you may have bought from a set years ago and you can't find the rest of them, or some of them got stained years ago and no matter what you tried, you just cannot get the stain out. So overall, we found this extremely useful to have because it's also just nice that, for example, when you're eating something messy, you can just grab this and not have to worry about how to properly wash it afterwards. Now this is another suggestion for perhaps one of those overlooked areas. So we've kept a small drawer for those items that you often want to grab as you're quickly leaving the house. So things like perhaps an extra hand sanitizer if you're going on a train ride, or some extra napkins, locker keys for the gym, bike keys, things like that that have a designated spot and you know where to find them. You simply just want a space for if you quickly need to get in and get out, you know where to get those essentials. And so now the next recommendation I have is to keep at least one small area designated towards junk items. So here we've kept 2 drawers dedicated towards not necessarily junk items, but just miscellaneous items, like things that you haven't put back in its proper space, but you quickly just place it in here. Or things like you're going for a run, get out your AirPods. I also keep things like an extra mouse in here for when I want to do a bit of work at the dining room here. I think that's one aspect that's often overlooked when it comes to organizing a space, but I think it's just so essential, especially for a space that gets used quite often, that's in a very high traffic zone. This is a dining room that we sometimes work at, it's close to the kitchen, it's close to the living room. Things always get left at the dining room because it's practically the first place we see when we get into the apartment. So by having 2 areas that are designated towards those more random items, it actually just helps to keep the space a bit more tidy. Now, of course, I do recommend that you clean out the area once in a while and put everything back into the right spot. Now, another area that I think might be often quite overlooked is, so I kept one small drawer for those quick household stationary items that you quickly need in a pinch. So things like a flashlight, and it's not necessarily a stationary item, but it's more of those essential household items. Or a measuring tape, a highlighter, a pen. Now we do keep our stationery organized in other areas of the house, like the office, which I think is of course a better space to organize all your stationery items. But sometimes in a space like the dining room, you want to quickly write down something on a piece of paper. Well, here you can find a pen. Or you need to measure your space. Well, now you know you can find your measuring tape in such a drawer. And the last few recommendations I have for just organizational areas within your cabinet is that you don't necessarily have to keep all your kitchen items in the kitchen, and you can also utilize your drawer space for stuff like that. So for example, we keep extra freezer bags in here. How would you even store something like a reusable freezer bag in the cabinet? If you laid it in the cabinet, it would take up so much space. If you wanted to keep it up, then you would need to get something else that helps hold it in place. But in a drawer like so, I can organize these by size and then quickly find the one that I need. And the same goes with things like aluminum, baking paper. I mean, this thing, for example, took up so much space in the kitchen drawer, and I used to keep the baking paper on top of the oven. But since placing these items here, it's been a lot easier to, for example, rip off a sheet of baking paper. And so that is how I went about organizing the dining room cabinet. I hope I was able to give a few tips that you might not have thought of at the start, or some practical or useful tips that you can implement for when you are trying to organize your dining room cabinets. And of course, like I tried to mention at the beginning, this is an ongoing process. As for example, I do not necessarily like this all here, but there's a couple of spaces that we need to organize in other areas to get this to look a bit better. But just because something won't necessarily be finished as you're doing it, doesn't mean that you can't at least get started. So again, I hope that this was helpful to you. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.